3 nights alone on a remote cattle farm. The first 2 nights were completely normal. Then, on the 3rd night, every animal on the property suddenly panicked at the exact same moment. The dogs stopped barking and started growling at something hidden near the fence. At first, Caleb thought it was a predator. He was wrong. Because before the night was over, he would discover evidence that someone had been secretly watching him, strange whistles echoing through the cornfield, and a group of masked figures standing in the darkness. What happened next led to a police investigation, uncovered a mystery nobody could explain, and revealed a terrifying secret that still haunts him to this day. My name is Caleb, and this happened in October of 2022. My uncle owned a cattle farm in northern Montana. The property covered hundreds of acres. There were 2 barns, several fenced pastures, a cornfield, and a long gravel road leading to the main house. The nearest neighbor lived almost 4 miles away. Normally, my uncle handled everything himself, but that fall he had to leave for a livestock auction in another state. He asked me to watch the farm for 3 nights. I agreed without hesitation. I was 19 years old and thought it would be easy money. The first day was completely normal. Feed the cattle, check the fences, lock the barns. Done. The second day was exactly the same. Nothing unusual happened. No strange visitors, no weird sounds, nothing. Looking back, I wish things had stayed that way, because the 3rd night changed everything. Around 9:30 p.m., I was sitting in the kitchen eating leftover chili while scrolling through videos on my phone. Rain clouds drifted across the sky outside. Every few minutes, the moon would disappear behind them. The farm looked darker than usual. Still, nothing seemed wrong, until all the cattle started making noise at the same time. Not 1 cow, not 2, all of them. The sudden eruption of mooing nearly made me drop my phone. The sound rolled across the property like an alarm. I immediately stood up and looked out the kitchen window. The northern pasture was visible from the house. The cattle were moving nervously. Several were gathered near the fence line. Others were pacing in circles. Something had frightened them, and animals don't panic without a reason. At first, I thought a predator had wandered onto the property, but when the dogs started reacting too, I realized something much stranger was happening. Both farm dogs had been sleeping near the porch. Now they were standing, completely alert. Their ears pointed toward the northern pasture. Neither dog barked. That was what bothered me. Instead, they growled, low, aggressive, the kind of growl animals make when they're genuinely scared. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped onto the porch. The cold air hit me immediately. For a few seconds, I just listened. The cattle continued making noise. The dogs refused to move from the porch steps. Then lightning flashed somewhere in the distance. For less than a second, the entire pasture lit up, and I saw something. A tall figure, standing near the far fence, completely motionless. I blinked. Darkness returned. The figure vanished. I stared at the same spot. Nothing. Maybe it had been a fence post. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. That's what I told myself. But deep down, I knew what I'd seen. Someone had been standing out there, watching the pasture, watching the farm, watching me. A few minutes later, the cattle finally settled down. The dogs relaxed too. Eventually, I convinced myself that I'd overreacted. I headed back inside. Big mistake. Because 30 minutes later, things got worse, much worse. I was locking up for the night when I noticed something strange. The equipment shed behind the barn was open. The door swayed. I approached carefully. The flashlight beam shook slightly in my hand. The old metal door squealed as I pulled it open. At first glance, everything seemed normal. Tools, fuel cans, spare equipment. Nothing appeared stolen. Then my flashlight landed on the dirt floor. Footprints, dozens of them, fresh. I crouched down for a closer look. Something immediately felt wrong. Every footprint looked nearly identical. Same size, same pattern, as if multiple people were wearing the exact same boots. The tracks entered through the front of the shed, then exited through the back, leading toward the cornfield. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. Nobody should have been out here, especially not after dark. I pulled out my phone. No signal, not even one bar. The storm clouds had killed reception. Perfect. I looked toward the cornfield. The stalks swayed gently in the wind. Nothing moved, nothing made a sound. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was standing in there, watching me, waiting. I should have gone back to the house, locked the doors, stayed inside. Instead, curiosity got the better of me. I followed the footprints. That decision led me to the first piece of evidence. Evidence that proved somebody had been secretly watching me for days. The footprints stretched deep into the cornfield. The farther I walked, the quieter everything became. Soon the farm lights were barely visible behind me. Only my flashlight illuminated the darkness. Then I spotted something ahead, a lantern, sitting on the ground, burning. My heart immediately started racing. Someone had lit it recently. The flame flickered gently in the wind. Beside it sat a small wooden box. Old, weathered, no lock, no markings, nothing. I slowly approached. Every instinct told me not to touch it, but curiosity won. I lifted the lid and froze. Inside was a photograph of me, standing beside my uncle's barn, taken sometime earlier that week. I recognized the jacket I was wearing, the same one hanging in my closet, the same one I'd worn only 2 days ago. My blood ran cold. Someone had been watching me, not tonight, for days, maybe longer. Then I heard it, a whistle, slow, distant, coming from somewhere deeper inside the cornfield. A few seconds later, another whistle answered from farther away, and then a third, and a fourth, like people communicating with each other in the darkness. Suddenly I realized something horrifying. The footprints hadn't led me to the lantern. They had led me away from the farm, away from safety, and somewhere beyond the rows of corn. Someone whispered my name. Someone whispered my name. I froze. Every muscle in my body locked up. The voice hadn't been loud. In fact, it barely sounded louder than the wind, but I knew exactly what I'd heard. Caleb. For a moment I couldn't move. I slowly turned my flashlight toward the direction of the voice. Nothing. Just endless rows of corn stretching into darkness. Then the whistle came again. Closer this time, followed by another from somewhere behind me. My pulse instantly doubled. I wasn't alone, not even close. There were multiple people out here, and somehow they knew my name. I slammed the lid shut on the wooden box and backed away. The corn around me suddenly felt taller. The darkness felt heavier. Then something moved. A shadow. Only for a split second. Crossing between 2 rows nearly 30 yards away. I raised my flashlight. Nothing. Gone. My breathing became faster. I needed to get back to the house. Now. I turned around and began walking quickly toward the farm lights. The whistles continued. Never close enough to pinpoint. Never far enough to ignore. Almost like whoever was making them wanted me nervous. Wanted me looking over my shoulder. And it was working. Then I noticed something that shouldn't have been possible. The footprints I'd been following were gone. I stopped, confused. I pointed my flashlight at the ground. The tracks had simply disappeared. 1 second they were there, the next they weren't. The dirt looked untouched, as if nobody had ever walked through it. A cold chill crawled up my spine. I knew I hadn't imagined them. I'd followed them all the way from the shed, yet now there was no sign they had ever existed. That's when I heard running. Not ahead of me, behind me. Fast footsteps charging through the corn. Instinct took over. I ran. Corn stalks slapped against my arms and face. My flashlight beam bounced wildly. The footsteps continued, getting closer. Then suddenly they stopped. Complete silence. I slowed down, listening. Nothing. No whistles, no footsteps, no voices. For several seconds, the only sound was my own breathing. Then my flashlight landed on something hanging from a stalk of corn. I nearly screamed. It was another photograph. This one showed me unloading feed bags from my truck earlier that morning. Someone had taken it from close range, close enough to see my face clearly, close enough that I should have noticed them. My hands began shaking. How long had I been watched? Days? Weeks? Months? I stuffed the picture into my pocket and kept moving. The farm lights finally appeared ahead. I was almost out of the field. Then I saw someone standing near the edge. At first I thought it was my uncle. Then lightning flashed, and I realized it definitely wasn't. The figure stood perfectly still, tall, thin, dressed entirely in black, its face hidden by darkness. I couldn't see any details. Yet something about the way it stood felt wrong, almost unnatural. The figure didn't move, didn't react, didn't speak. It simply watched me. The second another flash of lightning illuminated the field, the figure was gone. Completely gone. No footsteps, no movement, nothing. I didn't wait around. I sprinted the rest of the way back to the house. The dogs were waiting on the porch. Both immediately started barking toward the field behind me. I looked back. The corn swayed in the wind. Nothing else. No figures, no lights, no whistles. I quickly locked every door and window. Then I grabbed my uncle's hunting rifle from the gun cabinet. For the next hour, I sat in the living room staring out the window, waiting, watching, trying to convince myself that whoever had been out there was gone. Then the power went out. The entire house went dark. My heart nearly stopped. Outside, the yard lights shut off. The barn lights disappeared. Everything vanished. The farm was swallowed by darkness. And that's when I saw dozens of lights appear inside the cornfield. At first I thought they were flashlights. Then I realized they were lanterns, moving slowly through the darkness. 1, 2, 5, 10, more, far more. The lights spread across the field like a swarm. Some moved, some remained perfectly still. I counted at least 20 before giving up. Then the whistles returned, this time louder, closer, coming from every direction. The dogs began whining. Actually, whining. I'd never seen them scared before, not like this. I picked up my phone and tried calling the sheriff's office. No signal, again. The storm had completely killed service. The lanterns continued moving, slowly, purposefully, as if they were surrounding the farm. Then I noticed something even worse. Several lights weren't in the field anymore. They were moving near the barn. Whoever these people were, they had already reached the property, and they weren't leaving. I raised the rifle and stepped closer to the window, trying to see how many there were. Then one of the lanterns suddenly lifted higher, almost like someone was holding it above their head. The light illuminated a face, a pale white mask, expressionless, featureless, terrifying. A second later, another masked face appeared, then another, then another. At least 8 figures stood near the barn, watching the house, not moving, not speaking, just staring. The whistles stopped. The farm became silent, and for the first time that night, I genuinely believed I might not make it until morning. 8 masked figures stood near the barn, completely motionless. The pale masks reflected the lantern light, making them look almost unreal. For several seconds, nobody moved, nobody spoke. The silence felt worse than any scream. I kept the rifle pointed toward the window. My finger hovered near the trigger. Then one of the figures slowly raised an arm. At first, I thought he was pointing at the house. Then I realized he was pointing toward the northern pasture, the same pasture where I'd seen the shadow earlier that night. A second later, every lantern went out. The darkness swallowed everything. The masked figures vanished, just like that. I stared through the window. Nothing, no movement, no lights, no whistles. The dogs were still growling. Whatever was happening wasn't over, not even close. Then came a loud crash from outside. The sound echoed across the property. It came from the direction of the barn. I nearly jumped. A second crash followed, then another. Something heavy was being knocked over. I grabbed the flashlight, took a deep breath, and headed for the back door. Every part of my brain told me this was a terrible idea. But if someone was inside the barn, I needed to know. The moment I stepped outside, cold wind hit my face. The farm looked completely different without power. The darkness felt endless. The flashlight beam barely reached 20 feet ahead. Slowly, I crossed the yard. The dogs refused to leave the porch. That alone terrified me. Normally, they'd run straight toward danger. Tonight, they wouldn't move. When I reached the barn, I found the main door hanging open, and something was moving inside. The flashlight beam swept across the entrance. Dust floated through the air. For a moment, I thought I saw someone standing near the far wall. Then the shape disappeared. My pulse hammered. I stepped inside. The smell immediately hit me. A strange smell, like damp earth. The barn should have been empty. Instead, it looked disturbed. Tools were scattered across the floor. Feed bags had been ripped open. Several cattle stalls stood open. Then I noticed something painted on the floor. A symbol, large, fresh, drawn in black paint. The same symbol from the wooden box, the same symbol carved onto the photograph. My stomach dropped. Someone had been inside recently, very recently. Then I heard breathing. Not mine, someone else's, coming from upstairs, the loft. I slowly pointed the flashlight upward. The beam moved across wooden beams and old hay bales. Nothing. Then I saw it. A white mask, only half visible behind a support beam, watching me. The second the flashlight landed on it, the face disappeared. I immediately ran toward the stairs. Adrenaline had completely taken over. I reached the loft in seconds. Nothing. Nobody. The entire area was empty. The only thing sitting there was a small wooden carving, a carving of my uncle's farmhouse. Every detail was perfect. Even the porch, even the windows. Whoever made it had studied the property closely, far too closely. Then I turned the carving over, and what I found carved into the bottom made my blood run cold. A date, October 14th, tomorrow. I stared at it, confused. Why tomorrow? What was supposed to happen tomorrow? Questions raced through my head. Then another whistle echoed outside, closer than ever. I looked through the loft window. My heart nearly stopped. Dozens of lanterns were moving through the northern pasture. Far more than before, at least 30, maybe 40. The lights formed a line, moving slowly toward the farm, like a procession, like a parade, or worse, a gathering. I immediately left the barn and ran back to the house. This time I wasn't curious anymore. I was terrified. The moment I got inside, I locked every door again. Then I tried my phone, one bar. Finally, I called 911 immediately. The dispatcher answered. I explained everything. The masked people, the lanterns, the symbol, the strange carvings. The dispatcher promised deputies were on the way. But because of my location, it could take 40 minutes. 40 minutes. That felt like forever. Then the security alarm suddenly activated. Not at the front door, not at a window, at the grain silo. Something had entered the property, and it was getting closer. The next 20 minutes felt endless. The alarm continued sounding. I checked the security monitor connected to backup power. Camera 1, nothing. Camera 2, nothing. Camera 3, empty. Then I opened camera 4, the grain silo camera, and nearly dropped the monitor. There was someone standing directly beneath the camera, looking up at it, wearing a white mask. The figure stood motionless for almost 30 seconds, then slowly raised a hand and pointed directly toward the camera. The screen immediately went black. Camera lost signal. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. A few minutes later, I finally saw flashing lights outside. Deputies. 3 patrol vehicles entered the property. I've never felt relief like that before. I rushed outside. The officers quickly secured the farm. Then I told them everything. every detail. To my surprise, they took it seriously, especially after finding the symbol in the barn. Additional units arrived. The property became an active investigation site. Officers searched until sunrise. What they found only made things stranger. There were hundreds of footprints throughout the fields, yet none of them led away from the property. It was as if dozens of people had simply appeared and then vanished. One deputy discovered something buried near the northern pasture, an old metal container. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, different farms, different families, different years. Some photographs were over 20 years old. One photo showed my uncle standing near the same barn, taken 15 years earlier, long before I was even born. Someone had been watching that farm for decades. The investigation lasted months, but the most terrifying discovery didn't happen until much later. State investigators became involved. Search teams combed nearby forests. Old abandoned buildings were searched. Tips flooded in. Nothing, no suspects, no arrests, no answers. The case slowly faded away. Life eventually returned to normal, at least on the surface. My uncle installed cameras everywhere, motion detectors, floodlights, new locks. For nearly 8 months, nothing happened. Then one night he called me. His voice sounded terrified. "Caleb," he said, "you need to come here." I drove to the farm immediately. When I arrived, he showed me security footage. The timestamp read 3:17 a.m. A single masked figure stood near the fence, completely still, watching the house. After several minutes, the figure placed something on the ground, then disappeared. The next morning, investigators examined the object. It was another wooden carving. This time it wasn't the farmhouse, it was the barn. And carved underneath was a message, a simple sentence, one sentence that still haunts me. "We came back because you saw us." To this day, nobody knows who those people were. Nobody knows what they wanted. Nobody knows why they targeted remote farms. But one detail has never left my mind. Investigators estimated at least 40 different individuals had been on the property that night. Yet every security camera recording ever recovered showed only one masked figure, always alone, always watching, and always appearing just before 3 a.m.